Hey everyone, welcome back to that channel. It is that time of year where Apple has just revealed this week their new M3 Max, which that includes this year the M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max all releasing at the same time. However, similar to previous years where they released the new generation on the MacBooks and then later on the MacBook Pros, 14-inch and 16-inch, they're releasing all three variants on the 14-inch MacBook Pro or 16-inch MacBook Pro. And the benchmarks actually came out for the M3 and the M3 Max. They have not yet for the M3 Pro. So I wanted to just go into my initial thoughts if you're considering buying this device, what's out there. So we're going to be looking at like what you could get from Micro Center or the used market, refurbished market, and then also what the pricing is for these particular devices. So let's hop right into first their pricing and offering. So when you get into the page, the order page, Apple page, you can filter by chip. So actually the 16-inch don't come with the M3s. Only the 14 inches come with the M3s, and then the 14-inch can also go to the M3 Pro or M3 Max. Now, one thing considering of the M3 versions is that it starts at 159.9, and this is essentially replacing the 13-inch MacBook Pro that had the touch bar. Now instead they want to bump that price up to the 14-inch. So you're actually paying more, but you do get kind of the better screen, the HDMI slot, stuff like that. But this particular variant of the chassis actually does not have the third USB-C. It only has two USB-Cs and MagSafe. So definitely some upgrades there. Probably what I imagine is happening right now is that because of the new 3 nanometer processor or 3 nanometer size chips, from all the online threads, it says that the yield is bad. I imagine that the MacBook Airs will always be a generation behind or until they can figure out this manufacturing process. So they're placing this M3 in a position where it's more expensive, maybe less people buy it. Maybe they'll buy the M3 Pro or M3 Max. That way, when it does finally come out, maybe a year later on the MacBook Air at that cheaper price point, they'll have more availability to have demand. That's just thought. That's what I think is happening because it's also maybe an economy of scale to get rid of the touch bar process or the touch bar and that whole chassis, retire that in the manufacturing. So all right, so if you take a look at what was posted, it was an iMac with an M3, which should be similar to all variants of even in the 14-inch laptop. So you're getting scores of 3,000 and 11,000 multi-core, which is basically around the same as the M1 Pro as these people have posted their results. So breaking the 4 gigahertz barriers, I would recommend if you guys like this kind of stuff, there's a lot of websites like Mac Rumors, 95 Mac, and Apple subreddit. But yeah, the M1 Pro is essentially around that same performance. So basically, this device is at that same level as the M1 Pro, but at a cheaper price point at release. Because at release, the M1 Pro came out for $2,000 on the 4,000 on the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Now, if you're considering buying these devices, one thing I'll consider is at Micro Center, at least, if you are lucky enough to live near one, purchasing decisions for getting the M3, you can actually pick up like a used M1 Pro for like less than that. And this particular version has 16 gigabytes RAM, 1 terabyte solid state drive. And if you didn't want to buy like refurbished, I think they sell these like, yeah, they sell them like 14.99. But I would just get these refurbished because at Micro Center they're basically the same version as Apple recertified. And if you look here at the pricing at 15.99, you only get like half the gigabytes of RAM, half the SSD. So essentially, you're losing out on that storage space. There could, when the benchmarks come out, I won't be testing the M3 version. I'm going to be getting the M3 Pro, but you could take a look next week when these benchmarks come out. That I'll be testing my typical like video games and Office suite. The one saving grace that possibly this could have better over the M1 Pro if you decide to go new and you're willing to sacrifice like gigabytes and of RAM and SSD is that the dynamic caching, which was announced by Apple may offer better performance in some of the GPU tasks that you may need to do, but we don't have benchmarks yet, so just something to consider. So the next thing I want to just high level talk about is the M3 Pro chip if you're going into this market versus the M2 Pro or M1 Pro. Similarly, as I mentioned, the typical release price is $2,000 at half a terabyte, and you get 18 gigabytes RAM. So previous generation, this had 16 gigabytes RAM. What I believe the reason they have these extra RAMs is they probably added the dynamic caching of the GPU to be this extra gigabyte. So they just will cache the GPU utilization on this specific gigabyte probably, and then the rest will be utilized normally by the system. We'll have to wait and see what other people mention or talk about for these price points. And then notice here that you get a binned version per usual, and this one actually comes out $100 cheaper than previous release generation years at $2,399. So what I'll say there is typically from a refurbished standpoint of what's on the market. Again, we don't have the benchmarks of the M3 Pro, but the M3 Max did come out. If we take a look at those, and you can then try to extrapolate what the price, what the performance would be, the M3 Max is actually performing at the M2 Ultra, which is around. You can notice here that the single-threaded score is always the same, around 3,000, which is similar to what it's always been at, around that price, that scoring range. But the multi-thread has significantly jumped up from the M2 Max to the M3 Max. Pretty good performance at a lower price point than the M2 Ultra, and also at a lower power consumption. So looking at what people are saying and what to expect from the M3 Pro, you could probably expect this would probably go based on the cores. You'd probably have the same single-threaded. I'd probably put this somewhere around 16,000 for the score of the M3 Pro, and then you would also have the different GPU utilization, which may give us better performance when I test out the game, and we'll see next week. But yeah, just my thoughts on the overall pricing of the M3 Pro and M3 Max is that if you're in the market for a device, you could get the M1 Pro 14-inch for the open box for $1,000. And if you actually are lucky enough to have people have this in stock, there's a version of this that has 32 gigabytes, but only 512 gigabytes solid state. Open box is 1,600. But there is a version actually out there that I've seen that I thought about pulling the trigger several times that has 64 gigabytes RAM, 1 terabyte of SSD, and that one went for 2,000. So it was a really weird pricing between 1,849 versus 1,999. This one's actually okay. So this one's not refurbished, which is why it's more expensive. But then there's a refurbished version for only $150 more, which is 2,000, which is in my opinion a crazy steal. So much RAM and the SSD upgrade with the M1 Max. So I'm currently debating. I have the new Legion, as you guys have seen in my previous videos, that actually kept that device as my main driver. I still have the Zephyrus, which is lighter for gaming. I kind of want to move away from Windows to go to even more lighter machine, which is why I'm considering actually keeping 14-inch silicone device. Whether I keep the M3 Pro or the M1 Pro, I mean, this is just a really good deal at almost $700 savings. So just something to consider between all the devices that they're offering, and with the initial benchmarks that I posted here that you can also get on Reddit or see on other Apple rumored device websites. Yeah, I would skip the M3, wait for the M3 MacBook Air. I'm assuming it's going to come out for $1,000 sometime next year. And then if you are in the market for the M3 Pro or M3 Max, wait for the benchmarks. I'll be testing the M3 Pro, the binned version, cheapest version. I don't expect some of these extra cores to do too much difference. And I'm going to be actually testing for the first time on my channel. I've been away from the Apple gaming scene, the game port kit. So, I mean, I usually just play Dota, but I'll test that out. Even though they have a Mac version, I'll test that out on that new way of playing Windows games on Macs. And yeah, that's my take on these devices. So I'll be picking it up on Tuesday. Hopefully getting some videos and benchmarks out that day on Tuesday. And until then, yeah, let me know your comments or thoughts on if I should actually pick up the unbinned version. I'm only gonna pick up one. I am considering this possibly to be my actual device that I don't just return for YouTube videos, or I might just get this M1 Pro. Let me know what your thoughts are on based on what I showed you on the pricing and the benchmarks. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.